Imagine waking up in a completely different world. Empty cities, forgotten technologies, governments that have simply disappeared, and only a small group of survivors trying to rebuild everything from scratch. But what if I told you that the Bible describes something very similar? The apocalypse is not only about destruction, it is also about a new beginning, a moment when the world as we know it ends, so that a new humanity can begin. Today we will explore a deep question. Is the apocalypse the end, or the restart of humanity? When we carefully analyze biblical prophecies, we realize that the final objective was never simply to destroy the world, but to purify it and restore it. Many people imagine the apocalypse as a scenario of absolute chaos, global wars, natural disasters, the collapse of civilization. But the word apocalypse comes from the Greek word apokalypsis, which means revelation. In other words, it is not just the end of the world. It is the moment when the truth is revealed and human history reaches its decisive point. Throughout the Bible, we see a pattern repeating itself. Whenever humanity moves completely away from God, a great judgment happens, followed by a new beginning. It happened during the flood in the days of Noah. The world was filled with violence and corruption. Then destruction came, but also a new start for humanity. Noah and his family became the survivors who began a new era, and many scholars believe the apocalypse describes something similar, but on a global scale. Before this new beginning, the Bible describes an extremely difficult period, a time known as the Great Tribulation. During this period, the world will face unprecedented crises, devastating wars, economic collapse, famine, and pandemics. The book of Revelation describes the famous four horsemen. The white horseman represents conquest and power. The red horseman symbolizes war. The black horseman represents famine, and the pale horseman represents death. These symbols show the progressive collapse of human civilization. Structures that once seemed unbreakable begin to fall. Empires decline, economic systems collapse. Advanced technologies stop working. Humanity finds itself facing a brutal reality. The entire system that sustained the world disappears. But it is exactly at this moment that something surprising begins to happen. Despite the destruction described in Revelation, the Bible makes it clear that not everyone will disappear. There will always be a remnant, people who survive the final events. These survivors are mentioned in several prophetic passages. Some will be protected, others will survive the catastrophes, and these groups become essential for the future of humanity. Imagine a world where there are no global governments anymore. Major cities have been abandoned. Advanced technology has been lost. In this scenario, the survivors would need to relearn basic things: growing food, building shelters, forming new communities. Humanity would return, in a sense, to its roots. But this time, something would be different. People would have witnessed the complete collapse of the old civilization, and that experience would completely change the way humanity lives. According to the Bible, after this period of chaos, something extraordinary emerges, a new time known as the Millennial Kingdom. This period is described as an era of peace and restoration. The earth begins to recover. Nature is renewed. Wars no longer exist. Prophecies say that even animals will live in harmony. This period represents a kind of restart for humanity, a world where justice finally prevails. After centuries of conflict, corruption, and destruction, humanity would have the opportunity to live under a completely different system. A system based on justice, peace, and balance. It would be as if human history were given a second chance. But the apocalypse goes even further. After the Millennial Kingdom, the Bible describes the most astonishing moment of all, the creation of a new heaven and a new earth. The old world, marked by suffering and death, finally disappears, and a completely renewed reality emerges. In this new world, there will be no more pain, there will be no more death, there will be no more destruction. Humanity will finally live in a state of absolute peace. This moment represents the final restoration of creation. Everything that was lost throughout history will be restored. When many people think about the apocalypse, they imagine only destruction. But when we look carefully, we notice something different. The apocalypse is not just the end. It is a transition, the end of a corrupted world, and the beginning of something completely new. Perhaps the true message of the apocalypse is not about fear, but about hope. The hope that even after the greatest collapse in human history, humanity can begin again.